It often goes unreported, but it is undeniable to anyone paying attention. We are currently seeing the left and liberalism itself support child abuse. It comes in many forms, perhaps most obviously in the industry of gender transition, which seeks to medicalize gender nonconformity and homosexuality, and has led to the sterilization, stunting, and massive physical and mental harm to children.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed. I struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction. And I have massive scars across my chest. And the skin grafts that they took of my nipples are weeping fluid today. And they were grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said. After surgery, my grades in school plummeted. Everything that I went through did nothing to address my underlying mental health issues that I had. And my doctors, with their theories on gender, thought that all my problems would go away as soon as I was surgically transformed into something that vaguely resembled a boy. Their theories were wrong. The drugs and surgeries changed my body, but they did not and could not change the basic reality that I am and forever will be a female. When my specialist first told my parents that they could have a dead daughter or a live transgender son, I wasn't suicidal. I was a happy child who struggled because she was different. However, at 16, after my surgery, I did become suicidal. I'm doing better now, but my parents almost got the dead daughter promised to them by my doctors. My doctors had almost created the very nightmare they said they were trying to avoid. So what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to be given therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirm to my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong. that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option, that they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. Today, I should be at home with my family celebrating my 19th birthday, and instead I'm making a desperate plea to my elected representatives. Learn the lessons from other medical scandals like the opioid crisis, to recognize that doctors are human too, and sometimes they are wrong. My childhood was ruined along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. This needs to stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Thank you.
But it also comes in the normalization of child sexualization and adult-child relationships. I've noticed this in broader culture, but especially so in academia, where queer theory and postmodernism has the greatest sway. Postmodernism centers around a belief that nothing is certain. There are no set moral values, and everything is suspect, including rationality and the total sum of human knowledge. There is no such thing as objective reality or objective truth. You will find these sentiments echoed in queer theory and gender ideology, wherein the scientific advancements and historical accounts of how society and culture work are discarded for the sake of opposing the status quo. Queer theory seeks to normalize the abnormal without critically examining why those taboos exist to begin with. Homosexuality exists even in the animal kingdom, and the opposition to it is primarily an extension of misogyny. Intercourse is ridden with dominance and submission, and as Andrea Dworkin notes in Right-Wing Women, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination." Leviticus 18:22. That means simply that it is foul to do to other men what men habitually, proudly, manfully do to women. Use them as inanimate, empty, concave things. Fuck them into submission, subordinate them through sex. When women are homosexual, it is an affront to the status quo of centering men, to a world where women have historically been traded as property from her father's home to her husband's. That lesbians have no connection to men and love women is a challenge to the status quo, which illustrates that queer theory is not at all subversive, but rather hedonistic, and seeks instead to remove any barriers to abuse and gratification that previously existed.
There is a long correlation between anarchism and pedophilia and support for pedophilia. Wait. That's a beautiful line. Thank you so much for asking. How about something relevant? I've been talking about rape culture all day, and pedophilia and the support of pedophilia is not rape culture. Actually, it seems you're acting like this is a spurious connection. So we're going to play Jeopardy. We're going to play queer theory. We're going to play queer theory, pedophilia, Jeopardy. Okay, answer. Commonly called the godfather of queer theory. Who is Foucault? Okay, 100 points. Foucault. Another way to ask this is who argued, no, I guess the answer would be, argued for the eradication of age of consent laws as in down to infants.
Who is Foucault?
Thank you. Okay, next one. The author of the founding document of queer theory. Who is Gail Rubin? What percentage? No, the answer is 50%. Question is?
The amount in that article that was a defense of pedophilia, specifically, quote, boy lovers, so men who love boys.
Oh. And since you're not believing me, quote, this is in the founding document of queer theory. Like communists and homosexuals in the 1950s, boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders of their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. That's in the founding document of queer theory. I'm sorry, I'm using facts. A thousand apologies. One must never let facts in the way. Oh, she also compared, by the way, she compared pedophilia to a preference for spicy food.
Now, the definition of woman is muddled by those who believe gender to be purely a state of mind. Sexuality is therefore essentially erased, but only for those whose sexualities were already a minority. By linking queer theory with homosexuals, it makes it more difficult for those who seek tolerance or who rightly view homosexuality as just another normal deviation of human behavior to argue against it. This was a strategic choice. After all, if homosexuality is lumped under the queer umbrella with kink and pedophilia, then they intend for homosexuality to have a moderating and legitimizing effect on the others. For example, as reported by Redux in June of 2022, a professor of ethics at Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway has called to legalize AI-generated child pornography, claiming that pedophilia should be seen as an innate sexuality that requires destigmatization. Ole Martin Moen, a gay man who identifies as queer, currently serves as a member of the advisory board on Norway's Patient Organization for Gender Incongruence, a social and political hobby group for trans rights. According to their official website, PKI's purpose is to provide access to gender-affirming treatment to the public, regardless of factors like non-binary identity, sexual practice, or having other diagnosis. Moen has also served as academic counsel at Cited, Norway's largest liberal think tank since 2015. This professor wrote a paper in 2015 titled The Ethics of Pedo, whose abstract reads, "Pedo is bad, but how bad is it? And in what ways and for what reasons is it bad?" This is a thorny issue and sadly one seldom discussed by ethicists. In this paper, it is argued that pedo is bad only because and only to the extent that it causes harm to children, and that pedo itself, as well as pedo expressions and practices that do not cause harm to children, are morally all right. It is further argued that the aim of our legal and social treatment of pedo should be to minimize harm to children, and that current practice is often counterproductive in this respect. He argues that pedo is an innate sexuality, akin to homosexuality, due to an estimated prevalence of 5% of men, or slightly less than that, being sexually attracted to pre-pubertal children, and because of a significant gender discrepancy among pedos, with roughly 7 out of 8 being men. While it is true that some pedos do not choose to be attracted to children, the argument that if something is entirely out of our control, such as our genetic makeup, it seems that though it might be more or less fortunate and perhaps more or less pathological, it is not properly subject to moral assessment, is just an inaccurate and harmful way of looking at it. This argument ignores that sexual preferences can be influenced by outside forces, a phenomenon that has been explored previously regarding kinks and fetishes, as well as specifically the intersection of porn and attraction to children. Rockman's 1966 study on the Pavlovian conditioning of sexual arousal found that arousal could be conditioned to an image of boots. In his study, a photographic slide of a pair of black boots was paired with a slide of an attractive nude woman. After several pairings, a conditioned penile arousal response develops the slide of the boots, essentially resulting in what might be termed a sexual fetish. Consistent with behavioral accounts of sexual deviation, it was concluded that sexual arousal could be conditioned to previously neutral stimuli. Further, this research provided support that sexual deviations could result from the pairing of sexual arousal and previously neutral stimuli. Although the study wasn't perfect, further studies corroborated the ability for sexual fetishes to be conditioned. The impact that porn use has on sexuality was left out from his paper, which hinged on the concept of pedo being inborn and unchangeable. Currently, it is estimated that the prevalence of pornography use is relatively high, especially in men, around 60 to 98% compared to women, around 30 to 90%. Additionally, pornography consumption has been increasing across birth generations, reflecting the impact of the internet providing easier access to pornography as well as removing monetary restrictions. This means that previous studies on pornography often do not reflect the full impact on behavior and attitudes due to the generational increase. An obvious gender divide exists as men consume more porn compared to women. Not only has the amount of pornography consumed changed over time, but so too has what is defined as pornography. Many of the advertisements, music videos, movies, and games that are available today will be viewed as pornography up until the turn of the century. Softcore pornography, defined as being less explicit with a lack of visual penetration and focus on the female form as the erotic focus, can be used to describe many of these images. This is more similar to what was being recorded during early research on pornography. For example, in Zillman and Bryant's 1982 study, it was found that massive exposure, defined then as 1 hour a week, led to a loss of compassion for female rape victims. Another study conducted by the pair found that those who had considerable prior exposure to common nonviolent pornography showed little interest in common nonviolent pornography, electing to watch uncommon pornography, bondage, sadomasochism, bestiality instead, illustrating how pornography usage leads to escalating preferences which are more violent and niche. The amount of abuse, violence, and degradation in pornography has continued to grow as a result of ease of access and common usage of normal pornography. But research on pornography has remained stigmatized and often impacted by self-reporting bias. This has in turn resulted in a gap in the literature regarding the impact of changing internet usage on both users and society as a whole. In recent years, sex crimes committed by children have increased yearly, with reports noting that sexual offenses by children aged 10 and under more than doubled from 204 from 2013 and 2014 to 456 in 2016 and 2017. Many sexual abusers use pornography and admit to the influence it had on their desire to harm others. Links between teen dating violence and pornography use have been noted, as boys exposed to violent pornography were 2 to 3 times more likely to report sexual TDV perpetration and victimization and physical TDV victimization than their peers. A 2013 paper titled Internet Pornography and Pedophilia argues that clinical experience and now research experience are accumulating to suggest that the internet is not simply drawing attention to those with existing pedophilic interests, but is contributing to the crystallization of those interests in people with no explicit prior sexual experience interest in children. And yet, Professor Ole Moore and Moen decided to defend the idea that pedo is only bad because, and only to the extent that, it causes harm to children, and that pedo expressions and practices that do not cause harm to children are morally all right. In other words, he believes that there is no inherent wrongness in watching child porn, or indeed artificially made versions of it. This is incorrect, as not only does AI-generated porn use real images of children to create their own images, but in enacting certain child pornography statutes, Congress found that child pornography often was used by pedophiles to stimulate and whet their own sexual appetites, and furthermore, they would often use it to seduce other children into sexual activity. A child who is reluctant to engage in sexual activity with an adult or to pose for sexually explicit photographs can sometimes be convinced by viewing depictions of other children having fun, participating in such activity. Oftentimes, one child's memorialized incident of sexual abuse is used to victimize additional children in the future. Additionally, there is a strong link between child pornography and committing child abuse. This information is not new and has been well known for quite some time. 40% of people charged with child pornography also sexually abuse children, but finding the predators and identifying the victims are often daunting tasks. A 2000 study issued by the Federal Bureau of Prisons found that 78% of offenders convicted of internet-related crimes against children admitted to contact sex crimes with children previously undetected by law enforcement and had an average of 30.5 child sex victims each. According to the Mayo Clinic of the U.S., studies and case reports put that correlation rate between child porn and child molesting between 30 and 80%. During one study, the majority of men who had been charged with or convicted of child pornography offenses showed pedophilic profiles on phelometric testing. This stance, oddly enough, does not come alone. In February of 2022, clips of Professor Stephen Kirschner of the philosophy department at Fredonia emerged wherein he stated,
"Imagine that an adult male wants to have sex with a 12-year-old girl. Imagine that she's a willing participant. A very standard, very widely held view that there's something deeply wrong about this, and it's wrong independent of it being criminalized. It's not obvious to me that is in fact wrong. I think this is a mistake, and I think that exploring why it's a mistake will tell us not only things about adult-child sex and statutory rape, but also about fundamental principles of morality. Things to say here. One is, even if you are looking for a threshold, let's say there's a threshold. I'm making this number up, but let's say it's at age 8. Still, that tells you that some adult-child sex is permissible. Second, the notion that it's wrong even with a 1-year-old is not quite obvious to me. There are reports in some cultures of grandmothers filleting the baby boys to calm them down when a colicky. Now, I don't know if this is true, but this is sort of widely reported as occurring in at least one culture, and it working, that the grandmothers believe this actually works. If this were to be true, and again, I don't know it to be true, if it were to be true, it's hard to see what would be wrong with it. So, yeah, I guess I think, no, I don't think there's a blanket period beyond which this is permissible. If we're interested in willing participation, which is the way I structured it, then yeah, there's a point below which people aren't willing participants in anything because they don't have intentions or they don't have the sort of mental states that allow for willing participation. But no, I don't think it's blanket wrong at any age.
On July 26th of this year, a German radio show portrayed pedophiles sympathetically. As Redux reports, during that episode, listeners are first introduced to a pedophile named Max who argues that heterosexual men do not attack every woman they find sexually attractive. Max claims that pedophilia is simply a sexual preference that deviates from the norm. Disturbingly, Max also claims to work with an association of men with child abuse fantasies seeking to promote self-help amongst pedophiles, called Destiny and Challenge. The group states it works to combat the enormous stigma and making information about the sexual preference easily accessible. In his personal profile found on the Destiny and Challenge site, Max writes that he is attracted to young girls aged from 5 to 12 years of age. I am primarily attracted to girls before and during the onset of puberty, but I'm also attracted to teenage and adult women, he says. The desire to push the normalization of attraction to children is not new, however. As previously mentioned, postmodernism is full of pedophilic sentiment, and indeed pedophiles, as major players in the field, including Michael Foucault and Simone de Beauvoir, had dalliances with children. You can find out more about why postmodernism is anti-women's rights and anti-gay rights in a previous video where I went more in depth on this topic, as well as the overlap with child abuse and the transgender movement. While it is true that there is a conflation between homosexuality and pedophilia, the truth is that we live in a pedophilic culture. Often, when girls are the target of abuse, it goes unnoted or is brushed under the rug due to the patriarchal culture it exists in.
Women, we are also responsible for holding predators accountable. Little girls are not responsible for grown-ups adultifying them. And adultification includes holding the child responsible for the projected sexuality by an adult. By putting that responsibility on the children, not only do you affect personal development and autonomy and their understanding of consent, but you also indirectly condone the behavior of the predator. We can't ignore things that don't feel good and expect them to get better or go away. These men need help and accountability, not accommodation.
So this just happened, and it's crazy but not surprising that there are still so many black people willing to defend disgusting human being, especially older black people. Like, I didn't know that young girl was 14 during the taping of that video, and this is just a classic case of adultification of young black girls. People were saying, oh, well, she knew what she was doing. She was being fast. No one told her to be around this grown man. She was a child. He is a grown man. You guys are disgusting, trying to justify his actions.
Verity Violet notes this trend in Hollywood especially. She writes, let's start back in 1919. Charlie Chaplin, who would become one of the most famous and celebrated movie stars of all time, was 29 when he married 16-year-old aspiring actor Mildred Harris. Their marriage only lasted 2 years. In 1924, Chaplin repeated the pattern with another 16-year-old, Lita Gray. He met Lita when she was just 6 and began taking her on dates around the age of 12. 1954, Sam Cooke meets a 12-year-old Aretha Franklin and brings her back to his hotel room. Before her father interrupted, Aretha said the conversation took another turn. In 1957, 23-year-old Jerry Lee Lewis married his cousin, 13-year-old Myra Brown. She still believed in Santa. Also in 1957, 16-year-old Anna Mae Bullock met 24-year-old Ike Turner. He quickly took her into his band, helped make her a star, and began to treat the newly Christian Tina as if he owned her. They married 6 years later. Tina once wrote that she was afraid not to accept his proposal. In 1959, Elvis Presley met his future wife. He was 25 and she was 14. They stayed in touch via phone and letters for the next 2.5 years. At that time, Elvis took her on a drug romp to Vegas, followed by moving her into his Graceland mansion. They didn't marry until 1967. While both parties claim that Priscilla was a virgin on her wedding night, biographer Susan Finstad makes a strong case that this could not be true. Priscilla herself has admitted that she and Elvis slept in the same bed and that Elvis taught her other ways to please him. Elvis purportedly had a predilection for 14-year-old girls both before and after his marriage to Priscilla. Chuck Berry was arrested and found guilty of transporting an underage girl across state lines for immoral purposes, spending 2 years in jail in 1960. In 1969, Sable Starr, queen of the so-called baby groupies, had a brief relationship with Iggy Pop. She was 13. He later wrote a song about it. Starr had sexual relationships with many other band members, including encounters with David Bowie, Mick Jagger, and Rod Stewart. It's 1972, and rock stars are still having sex with little girls, and everyone knows it, but no one does anything about it. Laurie Maddox tells of losing her virginity at age 14 to David Bowie. She went on to start dating Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page that same year, a relationship that began when Page's manager kidnapped her and brought her to Jimmy's hotel room. Page left Laurie essentially locked up in his house for most of their 18 months together. The baby groupie also reports a sexual relationship with Mick Jagger when she was just 17. In 1973, married singer Marvin Gaye met and pursued 17-year-old Janice Hunter. He wrote "Let's Get It On" as a tribute to his lust for her. Marvin took his teen date to dinner shortly after they met, where he bribed the waiter to bring her alcohol, then had sex with her later that night. They had a baby by the time she was 18 and married in 1977. The marriage lasted just 3 years. In 1975, Steven Tyler purchased the guardianship of a 16-year-old girl, Julia Holcomb, from her mother when he was 27 so that he could legally take her with him across state lines while he was on tour. In 1978, Ted Nugent also purchased the guardianship of a teenager from her parents. He was 30, Pile Masse was 17. Years later, Ted reportedly received oral sex from a 12-year-old Courtney Love. March 10, 1977. One of the most well-known cases, director Roman Polanski drugs and rapes 13-year-old Samantha Gailey. Allowed to plead guilty to a lesser charge, Polanski nevertheless fled to France before sentencing and remains exiled from the United States. He has not been exiled, however, from Hollywood and continues to make movies and win awards to this day. Eagles drummer and vocalist Don Henley was arrested in 1980 in Los Angeles after paramedics were called to his home to save a naked 16-year-old girl who was overdosing on cocaine and Quaaludes. Colored over as a grand romance in a decades-long relationship, Celine Dion was 12 years old when 38-year-old Renee Angeli became her manager. They went public with their relationship when she was 19. In 1984, Rolling Stones bassist Bill Wyman started dating Mandy Smith. She was 13. Although they did not marry until she was 18, Mandy says she was 14 when they first had sex. Mr. Wyman has never been investigated, much less prosecuted. Red Hot Chili Peppers lead Anthony Kiedis readily admits to having sex with a 14-year-old girl when he was 23. According to him, once he confirmed her age, he had sex with her again. In 1986, the 24-year-old musician began dating 16-year-old Lone Sky. In 1990, 16-year-old Mate Garcia's mother sent a video of her belly dancing to Prince. He arranged to meet her, confirmed she was 16, and a year later moved her into his house. When she was 19, he initiated a sexual relationship by informing her it was time to go on birth control. They married when she was 22 and he was 37. Before mate, Prince met Ariana Fantastic when she was 15. At 17, she moved into his compound where they had a 2-year-long relationship. In 1991, 32-year-old director Luc Besson met and eventually married model Maïwenn Libesco when she was 15. Their relationship inspired his movie, Leon the Professional, which followed an emotional relationship between a young adult man and a young girl. In 1993, Jerry Seinfeld picked up a high school student in a public park. He was 39 and she was 17. He and Shoshana Lonstein dated for 4 years, through her college years. Also in 1993, MC Ren of NWA was accused of raping and impregnating a 16-year-old girl on the group's tour bus. The case never went to trial, however, a paternity test showed that he was the father of the girl's baby. Noted pedophile R. Kelly secretly married R&B singer Aaliyah in 1994 when she was 15 and he was 27. They met when she was 12 and he later helped write and produce her first album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. In 1995, teen star Brandy, age 16, started dating 21-year-old Boyz II Men member Wanya Morris. Keeping their relationship under wraps due to her age proved too stressful for the couple and they broke up soon after. In 1997, Woody Allen should have become notorious when he married his de facto stepdaughter. Though she was 21 at the time of his wedding, the two met when she was 8. No matter the spin, the facts are stark. This wasn't the only time Allen dated a much younger woman. Actress baby Christina Englehart began a years-long love affair with Allen when she was 16 and he was 41. When Allen was 42, he romanced a 17-year-old actress and high school senior, Stacey Nelkin. It's the early mid-2000s, and that 70s show actor, Wilmer Valderrama, continues to date teenage girls in an effort to deny that he is now over 30. He dated 16-year-old Mandy Moore despite being 4 years her senior. At age 24, Valderrama dated 17-year-old Lindsay Lohan, though they kept the relationship a secret until her 18th birthday in 2004. In 2010, the 30-year-old began dating 17-year-old Demi Lovato. In 2001, Fast and Furious star Paul Walker, 28 at the time, was dating 16-year-old Aubriana Atwell. This was not Paul's last time to date a teenager. His girlfriend at the time of his death, Jasmine Pritchard Gosnell, was 23 to his 40. They met when she was 16. Back in 2004, 26-year-old Joel Madden and Hilary Duff did the familiar dance of being just friends until her 18th birthday in 2006. When asked about whether she was intimate with Madden or not in a 2015 interview with Cosmopolitan, Duff stated, "I had a 26-year-old boyfriend, so everyone can make their own assumptions about what I was doing." In 2005, clean-cut TV heartthrob Chad Michael Murray begins dating a girl in high school. They get engaged when she turns 18, and Murray calls her a little sweetheart and says that they've been together for a while. Similarly, in 2006, co-stars Hayden Panettiere and Milo Ventimiglia began dating. She was 17, he was 12 years her senior. Actor Dud Hutchinson married 16-year-old Courtney Stodden in 2011, when he was 51 years old. The dysfunctional pair became famous as reality stars, with Courtney going under extensive plastic surgery to maintain their image. Rapper Tyga and Kylie Jenner began hanging out an awful lot beginning in 2014 when she was 16 and he was 24. They dated on and off after that, though they became a lot more openly on after her 18th birthday in 2016. In late 2018, 44-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio publicly reveals that he is dating 21-year-old model Camilla Mono. It's not just the age gap that puts Leo on our list, it's the fact that he's known Camilla since she was 11. 2018. 14-year-old Millie Bobby Brown innocently revealed that rapper Drake, age 31, has been close friends with her for the last year, giving her advice about boys. He texts her, "I miss you." This is the same Drake who has, more than once, skated around that just friends until she turns 18 line, most recently with 18-year-old model Bella Harris. This isn't a friendship, this is grooming. No one will stop it. They'll date. He'll have sex with her, probably in a couple of years. No one will care because he's a star. No one will care unless we make people care. This is not a sexuality problem. It is a male problem. Of course, there are female pedophiles, but they number far less than those that are male. If it's a boy who is the victim, or the girl falls on the wrong side of young, or then perhaps he will face rebuke. However, this is not always the case. If she is deemed too fast, too sexual, having wanted it, having tricked him, or taunted him, then the blame falls on the child.
Do you get tired with people talking about how beautiful you are? Because you are an incredibly beautiful young woman. You're, what, 13 years old now?
I'll be 13.
When?
May 31st.
So you have a birthday coming up?
Yep.
What are you going to do for your 13th birthday? You're actually becoming a teenager now. Because I think that you have an unusual physical presence. And do you get tired with people constantly coming on to you, talking to you about it? I mean, you've been a model since you were like 5 years old, right?
Well, I was a model since I was 11 months old, but yeah.
Do you have any boyfriends now?
Well, I mean, I go out with more than, I go out in a group.
Do you date now?
Well, in groups, I do.
In group date. Let's look at some. We have some of the pictures here. When was this taken, Brooke? If you look over at the monitor, you can see.
I was, I believe, 9.
Even at age 9, you had an older look. Can we look at the bottom two? Oh, this is true. Now, if I were to look at this, I would say this looks like a 22-year-old woman here.
I don't know, I think I was also about 9 then.
9 years old.
What
if you end up looking like 40 when you're 20? Maybe this progression is going to turn against you. You never know. That's beautiful. Now this is what I would call in old-fashioned terms, kind of a come hither look. You know what I mean by that?
Not exactly.
Good. That's okay. I'm not even going to explain it. But here is one thing I'm wondering about. The girl that you play in Louis Malle's film Pretty Baby, which is currently running, right, is a sexy girl. Do you, in real life, now, you know, think of yourself as sexy?
No. I mean, no, because I'm just 12, and I will be 13, and I'm just, when I'm in a movie, I'm just acting the role. I'm not the person
Sure.
that's the role, and so I don't think that I'm sexy.
You don't think of yourself like that at all?
No.
Do you think that all of the controversy that came to surround the fact that you're playing this child prostitute, right? Do you think that it was a little bit blown out of proportion just simply because they were ignoring the fact that, look, you happen to be beautiful, you happen to be 12, and you happen to be an actress, and you happen to be playing a prostitute, and that's it?
Right, and
Far too often, the victims of child sexual abuse go unnoticed, or worse, are blamed for their abuse. The ways in which we portray children on television, the clothes laid out in stores for them to choose, and the methods that we offer them for validation and confidence all play into this culture that seeks to sexualize children. In her blog, All About Sex, Global Childhood Sexualization and Education, Minju Wu provided the APA's definition of sexualization: the inappropriate imposition of sexuality through objectification, overvaluing, or emphasizing appearance and/or sexual behavior. She indicated that there is a direct sexualization: advertisements and programming that target and sell commodities to children, especially girls, like Bratz baby dolls with fishnet stockings and miniskirts, and padded bras and bikinis for girls who wear size 7. Indirect sexualization occurs when technology enables children to access pornographic imagery, easy for any child with a smartphone. Wu believes that the social harms of validation include the marked decline in girls' self-esteem when they feel validated only by expressing themselves through sexualized means. Further, some boys develop strong expectations about appearance and obligatory, likely macho, social behavior based on hypocharged male sex drive. A third threat is internet-initiated sexual assault, the incident of which has increased drastically between 2007 and 2019, possibly fueled by sexting, the sending of sexually explicit digital materials, videos, or messages via cell phone. An APA study, Task Force on the Sexualization of Girls, links sexualization to eating disorders, decreased self-esteem, and depression in girls and women. I could go on and on about this, but surely you are aware of the existence of child marriages, both historically and contemporarily, both in the U.S. and in foreign countries. Surely you already know of the ways in which girls' clothes are smaller, tighter, and reveal more skin, leaving no other options on the shelves to choose from. The only difference between mainstream culture, which saw Brooke Shields at age 10 photographed in Playboy, and which ignores Hollywood's problematic age gaps, and queer theory, is the manner in which legitimization is attempted. Hollywood does so through careful presentation of abuse as romance. You can see this through the manner in which Lolita has been adapted twice on screen, both times missing the point of the difficult text, through the ways that men have given access to girls and women in the industry, stemming as far back as the industry goes. Meanwhile, queer theory goes for an academic route. It intends to normalize by making its critics too confused to argue against it, and by separating child abuse from the reality it occurs in. The suggestions that we're too mean to pedophiles, that we need to be more welcoming or open-minded, are all attempts to make you forget that there are real children harmed by their actions, and that those who harmed them made that choice. There is no gray area here. Child abuse materials, fake or not, are harmful and perpetuate harm to the normalization of abuse. You either care about the safety of children, or you value the men who abuse them more. Which is it? This, dear viewers, is where we part. I'm aware that that was a very long segment about Hollywood, but I think that for a lot of us, you notice the one that's most recent, or maybe you noticed a couple years after the fact when you look back and you go, Demi Lovato really shouldn't have been dating someone that old. But the ongoing pattern often goes ignored because it's so widespread, because it's so omnipresent. Hell, I remember so many people my own age, as high schoolers, dating 30-year-olds, dating 25-year-olds, and their parents are perfectly fine with their teenage daughters dating older men who seemed successful. It's so normalized to have these huge age gaps for children to be dating adults, for teenagers to be dating adults, and for people to defend the stance like it's something that's looked down upon for the wrong reasons. No, this is child abuse. It is harmful. Those girls, those children do not deserve to have their childhood stolen away, to be sexualized at a young age. It's not right, and I'm so tired of seeing people do it. And furthermore, I don't want to see people saying this is a gay issue either, because quite simply, the ones who are perpetuating this issue are men on both sides of the equation. It is unfortunate that queer theory puts everything that's considered different or not normal under the same umbrella, but that doesn't mean that we belong there. Queer theory is for straight people who have weird tastes in sex, who want to date more than one person, who are attracted to animals, who want to use whips in the bedroom. It has nothing to do with me, with other homosexuals, and I resent that those two things are often placed together. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.